The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting live from the UK and across the world online, you're now listening to the UK's only live alternative late-night talk show, and I'm Kevin Moore. For the next 3 hours, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On tonight's show, I'll be joined by theoretical physicist Dr. Amit Goswami, who is a pioneer of the new paradigm called science within consciousness. The phone lines will be open on the second and third part of the interview for you to interact with our guests. We are live every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday from 1 AM to 4 AM British Summer Time. And that's Monday and Wednesday and Friday, 8 PM to 11 PM Eastern Daylight Time in America. I'm now joined by theoretical physicist Dr. Amit Goswami, who is a pioneer of the new paradigm called science within consciousness. As well as being a highly sought-after international speaker, Dr. Goswami is also the author of 11 books and numerous papers, translated into 9 languages. He appeared on the popular film What the Bleep Do We Know, and is the subject of a new documentary, The Quantum Activist. Good evening, Dr. Amit Goswami. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very, very well, and I'm very honoured to have you on the show because I know how busy you are, so thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Now, Dr. Amit, just tell us a bit about your influences in your childhood, because obviously you were born in India. What influence did your parents have on the direction that you've taken with your work?
Well, that's a very good question, because my father was a spiritual teacher. So that must have rubbed off through me quite a bit, because I remember very quiet moments with him, and also he sort of gave me an early grounding in the Upanishads, which is the main treatises of Indian spirituality. Although, you know, to tell you the truth, I forgot all of it starting with age 14,
right,
when I turned to science.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I mean, I think being born in India, it must give you that different perspective on the different types of spirituality out there, because it seems that a lot of that spirituality is now coming into the mainstream.
Yes, I'm pretty aware that it certainly did come back in a hurry when I rediscovered the nature of spirituality itself. I had to go the hard way. I became a materialist and completely forgot about my cultural groundings. And then when I discovered, starting from quantum measurement theory, that spirituality is legit, that consciousness is the ground of all being, just as the spiritual teachers say, then all that teachings that my father grounded me in, and also all the old books that I read before I became a materialist, all that came back in quite a hurry. And of course, since then I have studied, and now I know quite a bit about my heritage as well.
I would say you do. And quantum physicists, I mean, what was the shift for you? What was your push to go in that direction of spirituality? Was there some event that happened to push you into that direction?
Well, it was a very interesting event. I probably will never forget this. I was at a conference speaking about nuclear physics, and I gave a talk. Unfortunately, I didn't like my own talk. I thought others are doing better, so I started feeling this intense pangs of jealousy. So what can I say? The whole day I was kind of really jealous of everyone, and even at a party in the evening, jealousy just not going away. Before it was about physics, now it was how the opposite sex is being attracted to them, the other people, and nobody's paying attention to me, all that
Right.
kind of feelings of inadequacy. So I go out, and this conference was being held at the coast of Monterey Bay, a very interesting place. And so I go out, and the ocean air hits my face, and the thought comes, why do I live this way? And the meaning of it to myself was that why do I live this separate way, where my profession and my life are so separate that neither contributes to the other. And so I became determined from that day on that I want to live an integrated life.
Okay, and that was your initial shift, which has led you on to do the wonderful work that you're doing. And do you think how has the sort of physicist community taken your work and your change as well? Have they been quite supportive?
Well, actually, initially no, but as some success came and the years passed, when obviously there is now a palpable shift even in the academe, at least in the academe of open scientists. I recently went to a conference in Paris, and the change that has taken place in 20 years since my work first appeared is just amazing. So yes, there is now a lot more acceptance than there was 20 years ago.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift taking place. It's taking place as we speak as well. And we're at the pinnacle part of it, I do believe. And so what is quantum physics then, Dr. Amit?
Well, this is the most important question. Quantum physics is a physics of possibility. The first thing quantum physics tells you, and from the get-go people have known this, that there is not just the space-time world where matter seems to move independent of consciousness, but there is also, beyond this manifest level, there is a level of potentialities or possibilities. This is what quantum physics is about. Quantum physics gives us the mathematical equations, how these material possibility waves move. And then the question is that this is about a different world, a world of potential. How do you connect to the manifest world? And this question, to answer this question, we get to have a quantum measurement theory, how quantum measurement, namely this transformation of possibility into actuality, manifestation takes place. This is very tough because quantum physics gives us no clue, except that it must manifest in such a way that overall probabilities can be given of which possibility is going to manifest when. And because these probabilities can be given, because quantum physics gives probabilities, makes quantum physics predictive and very successful. It is the basis of many of our technologies, as you know, including the technology you're using right now. So that's the part of quantum physics that everybody understands and accepts. But then that question of quantum measurement, how quantum possibility become actual event of our experience, that question, to resolve it, quantum physics has something even more radical. The first radical question is something that everybody must accept, that there is two domains of reality. The space-time reality that we ordinarily call nature is not it. It's not the complete reality. There is beyond nature a supernature, a nature which is the domain of possibility. That's the first radical question. But the second radical message, which comes out of quantum measurement theory, is just mind-boggling. It tells you that quantum waves are possibilities for consciousness to choose from. And consciousness is ground of being. Material waves are part of consciousness. And because consciousness is choosing from itself, it does not need a signal to exchange with matter, and that removes all the objections that materialist scientists have been positing against consciousness all these 400 years of its history. So quantum physics is radical in its messaging to us.
Absolutely, it is radical, and it asks you to sort of ask the question then, well, what is consciousness in a sense?
Yes, so that is then the next question. Consciousness is in quantum physics. Has to be defined as the ground of all being that, upon manifestation, reveals itself as a subject looking at an object. So quantum physics posits that the level of potentiality, is a level in which there is no separateness between consciousness and its possibilities, but when consciousness collapses, that's the word physicists use, consciousness chooses out of these possible facets, the one particular facet that becomes the object of experience. At the same collapse event, consciousness itself identifies with the brain, and the brain becomes the subject of the experience. That's how the observer arises.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, so it does lead on to the sense that you can manifest the life you want. So just be careful. So are we saying then that our thoughts become creative? So be careful of what we think and choose.
We are saying that, except there is a caveat which one has to hear, and many people cannot hear in the beginning, which is that the consciousness that chooses is the ground of all being, not the consciousness that manifests as the subject of the experience, not the consciousness that is associated with the brain. That's the conscious awareness. But beyond this conscious awareness, there is the unconscious, which Freud first introduced in science, and then Carl Jung extended that idea. But now the quantum idea really has taken off with a very general notion of unconscious. Unconscious is the reservoir of all quantum possibilities of both matter and mind. In this way, we really have the capacity now to extend our science to engulf all of our experiences, not only the physical material experiences, but also mental and psychical experience.
Okay. So ordinary wisdom says that quantum physics does not much affect the macro world that we live in, but you say otherwise. How come, on what sort of basis do you say this?
Well, there is much evidence that mind is not matter. There is much evidence that mind is also quantum. David Bohm, long time ago, showed that mental thought, if you look at it carefully, and you can do it right now, which is that follow the meaning of a thought, content of a thought, and that's one way of looking at a thought. But there's also another way of looking at a thought, which is you just allow the thoughts to follow its own direction. This is what psychoanalysts do when they tell you to just follow your thought, follow the direction of the thought, pre-associate. So this two-way of looking at the thought has a fundamental incompatibility between them. This is what you find in quantum objects. You can never measure accurately both the position and the momentum velocity of a quantum object. Same thing happens with thought. You cannot measure both the content and the direction of thought with complete accuracy at the same time. So thoughts also have a built-in uncertainty principle that governs their movement. This is their fundamental quality, and then there is, of course, other qualities which will require a little bit of more exposition as we go on, such as one property is called non-locality. Non-locality is the capacity of signal-less communication. Matter has it, experimentally verified. Thoughts also have it, experimentally verified. It's called mental telepathy. The evidence is now abound. Then there is quantum leap. Quantum objects have the ability to jump from one place to another without going through the intervening space. Electrons do it in atoms. When they move from one atomic orbit to another, they never go through the intervening space. Amazing. We call it quantum leap. Mind takes a quantum leap in the event of a creative experience. This is why anybody who has been creative knows that creative experience comes with a surprise. Creativity researchers call the creative experience as the aha experience.
Yes.
This is another evidence that mind is quantum. So in this way, there's a lot of evidence. This is just the main three evidences that we can give.
Okay. Okay. No, that's well. I was going to say there. Do you think there's some governing rules to manifestation then as well, in the sense that it's got to be a benefit for others, not just yourself?
As soon as you recognize that mind is quantum, as soon as you have introduced mental possibilities as well as material possibilities, you realize that quantum physics applies to our macro world. What happens to conventional scientists is they're too stuck with the idea that everything is matter. But, Chinese medicine with acupuncture, Western medicine with homeopathy have long proven that there is such a thing as vital energy. Chinese call it qi, Indians call it prana. And they have entire medicine systems, working medicine systems. The acupuncture recently has shown. It's very popular in the West right now. So how does acupuncture work? You cannot explain it without the concept of vital energy, a life force. So in this way, we must begin to accept that neither mind in the capacity of processing meaning. Roger Penrose, a British physicist, mathematician, has proven with mathematics that a computer can never process meaning. So what does brain have that allows it to process mind, mental meaning? It just cannot, because as a material computer, it's limited to processing symbols. It can, however, make representations of meaning that consciousness gives it.
Okay.
But we must look at mind, the meaning giver, as a separate realm, as a separate universe. Similarly, the vital is also a separate universe.
Okay.
So these are
Doctor,
universes of possibility within the ground of being that consciousness is.
Dr. Amit, this is so interesting, but we've just got to take a short break. Now, after the break, the phone lines will be open for you to speak to Dr. Amit Goswami or share your opinion. You can call us on 0292 000 3666 or text your comments and questions to 07728 758 759, and that number again to call on is 0292 000 3666. International listeners outside the UK may Skype the show by adding The More Show Live, or you may choose to interact with us on Facebook and Twitter.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The More Show.
Welcome back. I'm currently joined by Dr. Amit Goswami. Dr. Amit, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Kevin.
Dr. Amit, your views on the continuation of consciousness when we pass on then, please.
Yes. Does consciousness continue when we die? This is a most important question. But, we started with the idea of both matter and psyche are possibilities of consciousness. As soon as you have appreciated the significance of it, you realize that matter dies. Brain certainly dies. So the material part of our body dies with our death. But really, what happens to the subtle, the part that we call psyche? What happens to consciousness itself? When you think about it, these things have no way that they can die. They're infinite existences, and really there is nothing like entropy law, which makes matter to die. So those things live on. And what quantum physics allows us to prove mathematically, that when we learn something, that learning capacity, of course, has representations in the brain, but it doesn't end there. Even if you take the brain representations out, there is a law-like existence of that learning. It stays in the mathematical equations that our mind uses as we get conditioned with our various learnings. So it is the confluence of all these learnings that we do during our life, our character that we build,
yes,
that we honor. It is that which survives our death. It's a very, very interesting understanding that we reach of what karma, that Eastern word, karma really means. It means the habit pattern, the learning agenda that we have fulfilled in every life. That becomes part of our established karma, our pattern of existence that will survive then, and our future incarnations will inherit that part.
So then it leads on to say, I suppose, that perhaps, if we all go back to the same place, then there must be a connection between us all. So, what we do to another, we perhaps do to ourselves as well, in a sense.
Yes, that's a very big question. That is the question of morality. Why ethics? We are connected to others by non-locality, and the non-locality question is a very big one. It persists even when we die. So we really should be careful about our ethical questions, our morality questions. And this is where scientific materialism, the prevalent worldview, is really very unhelpful. It undermines our sense of ethics from a very fundamental way, because there's no values. If matter is everything, material movement determines our nature.
That's right.
Then there's no value for anything that we do. And that really affects our sense of ethics. You notice it everywhere. People just don't have anymore a deep moral sense that moves them. And much of our social malaise, for example, the economic breakdown, is coming from abundance of ethics in our society.
Well, that's right, and we're going to get to that in just a second as well. And I mean, we could spend all day here talking about the continuation of life and what life really means. But I suppose an interesting question as well for myself and for the audience is what's your views on God, for example? Can you use that word, or do you think it's something like you personify that word perhaps for the universe consciousness?
Well, the word God is very tempting. When I was at the university, there was a implicit rule that you cannot utter the word God in a physics class. So I always used to refer to God as the G word. But I myself personally have been kind of emotionally attached to the word. So in my early writings, I have used the word God all over. I even wrote a book called God is Not Dead. But after thinking it over and talking to many of my compatriots of the new paradigm, I generally have recognized with them that it is probably better not to use the word God exclusively, because this consciousness that we are discovering is a universal consciousness. It's not really a personality, the way that religions think of God.
Yes.
And the religious God, including Christianity, Hinduism, or whatever, the religious God just cannot be upheld by science, because all religions think of some sort of personal God. This God that we are discovering is impersonal, it's cosmic consciousness, the ground of all being. Now, how many people can relate to that? But I'll say this, if you could, then you would discover the source of your creativity, the source of your free will. So there is great advantage in giving up the notion of personal God, however comfortable you are within that concept, and come to this notion of objective God. Although there is a room for personal God. The personal God is the archetypes. They take the place of what we worship as personal God.
Okay, well, maybe you could use the word I am God then, and use that empowerment to say that anything's possible in your life, that you have full manifestation power, full direction, and you have free will.
Yes, isn't that beautiful way of putting it? I mean, that's of course also vintage Bible. Be still and realize that I am God. But of course, topic as Jesus is talking about Jesus, but Jesus is talking about I, you, everyone. Be still and realize that I am God. That's the truth that quantum physics is rediscovering.
Oh, that's very beautiful. That is. And you were mentioning before about the economic collapse. Why, in your opinion, then, does civilization need saving?
Well, civilization does need saving, as is clear from the calamities that we have created that is destroying the civilization. Among the most destructive, I'll tell you this, Kevin, it's really a very, very fantastic notion that we have created with scientific materialism. The idea that truth itself is relative. There is no fundamental value to even truth. But look, then what happens, what we get in America because of what happens is called Fox News. I don't know if you get Fox News.
Yes, we do. Yes.
but really, I mean, all you have to do is just one session with Fox News and you realize that, oh my God, I'm getting subjective news. There is no objectivity in news anymore. Is there global climate change? No, according to Fox News pundits. So, but our scientists are doing the same thing. Is there consciousness? No, according to many of the scientific materialists that I'm talking about. Although quantum physics strongly, with good evidence, that's all science does. It just has a strong theory and strong evidence. Science never discovers in that way absolute truth, but it goes closer and closer to truth. We have to distinguish between subjective opinion and truth that is backed up by theory and data. And this, we have scientific theory for both global climate change and for consciousness is the ground of being. But look at our scientists ignore consciousness is the ground of being, and Rush Limbaugh, the pundit of Fox News, ignores the idea of global climate change. This is because we have undermined the validity of absolute truth.
And I like the way you put it. And I mean, do you think that some scientists that use the word, well, unless there's data to back it up, I can't look into that. Do you think that's quite naive of them, or is that just the way they've been trained that they don't want to look silly?
I don't think that they're naive. I think they're cynical. They know that without absolute truth, there is not even any science. Science is the pursuit of the archetype of truth. Otherwise, what is the value for science? And if there is no value for science, why do we do it? Just to produce technology? That's the view that is comfortable to many scientists who just rationalize, okay, we can live in a valueless universe. We can just produce more and more technology, and that's the value for science. But these material values do not satisfy. The truth is that when we do science as a pursuit of truth, we feel satisfied with our pursuit of science. And all the great scientists, you will notice, even today, they have roughly a notion of what I'm talking about. This is why I call them cynical, because they know the truth, that they do pursue the archetype of truth, which is absolute. They know it, but in public, they would deny it just for the sake of rationality or their rational belief.
Right. Okay, and I can see you're way past that. You don't seem to care what people think, and I really respect you for that as well, because that's an important part of breaking the paradigm down, I think, as well.
Also, that's an important part of being creative. Richard Feynman himself wrote a book called "What Do You Care What Other People Think?" That's the basic sentence for all creative people. And these scientists that we are talking about are certainly creative. So They know what I'm talking about firsthand.
So, Amit, I mean, how would you propose to saving us from sort of future economic meltdowns then?
Well, what you have to do, very simply, is take a suggestion that Abraham Maslow made in the middle of last century, which was that there is not only just material need, but a hierarchy of human needs. Now, Adam Smith Capitalism, if you go back to his basic book, is based on the match of gift and needs. Some people have the gift of producing, and some people, of course, have the need for consuming. You put production and consumption together, create the notion of free market and its invisible hand, and you got capitalism, and it works. Are people gifts and needs confined only to the material domain? For a long time, we thought so. But now that we are understanding our science better, we realize that certainly our subtle needs, need for meaning, need for values, need for vitality, are equally important as our material needs. This is what Abraham Maslow was trying to tell us in the mid-20th century. So if we take this hierarchy of needs seriously, we now can introduce an economics of the subtle. So can subtle be quantified enough to form economic capital and economic goods? The breakthrough development is that we can now measure mind because of MRI techniques, magnetic resonance imaging techniques of the brain. When our mind changes, when our thoughts change, brain reflects that, and we can take MRI pictures of it. So mind is quantified. Similar way, vital energy, this energy of life, energy connected with life force, that also can be measured with a measurement device called Carlian photography and another measurement device called biophoton emission tomography. So we now have the capacity of measuring what we always thought is too subtle to measure, too subtle to become economic good. But now that they are measurable, we can make economic expansion in the subtle arena, and this is where the future of economics is. If we did that, then you realize already there is a lot of talk about gross national product or gross domestic product not being a good measure of our economy. Because really, in truth, we do not feel completely fulfilled by satisfying our economic needs. We also need to have our living taken care of. And what is living? What is the quality of living? So this quality of life index has become very important, starting with a small country called Bhutan in India. Many governments now, United Nations itself has accepted that quality of life index is a very important index for measuring economic prosperity as well.
Well, that's right, yeah.
So this new economics is just a natural offshoot of that idea. If you put together GDP plus quality of life, what we get is subtle economics. Because quality of life is talking about economic goods in the subtle dimension. How much meaning are you producing? How much vitality are you producing? And these things are measurable. So you really can go ahead and found an economics which I call economics of consciousness.
But that change has got to take place with yourself first. I mean, if you want to go out there and save the world, you've got to change yourself, and you change the people around you, and then you sort of move on from there as a sort of natural progression. I mean,
the two things happen together, Kevin. I mean, that's
okay.
The beautiful idea is that two things can move together. We can change ourselves as we change our systems.
Okay.
Because changing our systems will help changing ourselves. We'll be living in a supportive environment for one thing. And the other thing that will happen is that only by combining the change of the economics and the economy and change of ourselves, we'll eventually get to sustainability. E.F. Shoemaker, a very important figure in Britain in the past century, his book, Small is Beautiful, made a huge splash, you remember. This man talked about the same thing that Gandhi talked about long before him, simplicity of life. There is beauty in simplicity of life. There is beauty in smallness. Now, of course, we have gone in the opposite direction. But the question repeatedly comes back. How do we get to that simplicity of life? Because that's the only life that we can sustain on a finite planet like our dear, dear Earth. So how do we sustain it? The question of sustainability. Every thinking person must be worried about it, because at the rate that we are going, consuming material goods, this just cannot be sustained. Everybody knows that. Aside from global warming, our resources themselves will run out. The first thing will be petroleum, of course. In spite of all this discovery of shale oil, it just prolongs our agony. It does not solve the problem. Everybody knows that. So what is the solution of the problem? Solution of the problem is, first of all, recognize that we have in our subtle domain an unlimited economic arena to pursue. You cannot limit how much meaning you will buy. You cannot limit how much vitality you need or can use. You cannot limit the amount of love or happiness that you can consume. Because of this, we have unlimited potentials to grow in these dimensions of subtle economy. If we do that, then the subtle economy will make us happier and happier, and as our quality of life increases, the quantity of life can actually be diminished.
Right.
The Gandhi idea, the Shoemaker idea, small is beautiful, then can be fulfilled. And this is how to get towards a sustainable economy.
Okay, well, stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Dr. Amit Goswami just after this.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. Broadcasting from the studios of Radio Cardiff, you're now watching The Moore Show.
Welcome to the show. I'm still joined with theoretical physicist Dr. Amit Goswami. Now, Amit, just before the break there, I really wanted to ask you as well about the... there's a sort of revolution going on in science right now, but you could say there's an evolution going on in consciousness, could you not?
Yes, definitely. We are definitely evolving towards better and better representations of these, what we call supramental archetypes. These archetypes like love, beauty, justice, truth, and you can look at everywhere and you find that, yes, indeed, we have more love today than we had thousands of years ago or even hundreds of years ago. Justice, enormous attention is now being given. Gay marriages, finally, even gay people are being acknowledged that they deserve fairness, fair treatment. Of course, women's liberation is now a fact for almost, several decades. So we have made major progress in terms of justice. This is an evolution of consciousness. You cannot understand this evolution if you are a believer in Darwinism. So we have to move beyond Darwinism and bring in what I call quantum evolution or creative evolution. Evolution occurs in two ways. One is the continuous tempo. That's Darwinism, slow but steady. But that's the one that produces relatively unimportant minor micro changes. For macro changes, such as from moving from reptile to bird, how does a land-based reptile fly away as a bird? That requires so many drastic changes that requires a quantum evolution or a quantum leap in evolution, discontinuous change. When you put that in, you are already using consciousness, because what produces such quantum changes? It, of course, requires consciousness to do that. So you are bringing in the idea of species consciousness, or even genus consciousness, or even whole class or whole phylum can be creative and be conscious at certain stages of evolution. And that's how we get this macro evolution. Right now, the evolution is taking place in the human species, how we use our mind. Initially, we used the mind only to process the physical. We were hunters and gatherers then. Then we process the vital for a while, and then we process the mental. This is the mental age right now. The rational thinking is mind studying mind studying the processing of mind itself, meaning of meaning. Now, what's the next stage? Next stage is when we'll study the archetypes, which we intuit. So that's the intuitional mind. This intuitive mind, if you accept that as the goal of our evolutionary future, you get a lot of insight about our history that remains obscure otherwise. If you look at history, starting from about 3,000 years ago when we discovered ethics, we have a tremendous improvement in the way we think about the archetypes. So that's an example of evolution of consciousness.
Okay. And you also say that if a small number of people transform, the whole of, humanity can as well. So, how so?
Well, this is an idea that Rupert Sheldrake introduced first, so I don't want to take the entire credit for that idea. Quantum physics just supports it in the way that I have interpreted Sheldrake's work and extended it. So Sheldrake had this idea because he discovered this concept of morphogenetic field. And if you're an aficionado of evolution theory, then surely you are aware of Lamarck, this remarkable biologist who lived even before Darwin, who had the idea of inherited characteristics. This is an idea that was discredited when we discovered gene, and Darwin's theory, of course, predicted the existence of gene. And rightfully, Darwin's theory took over the world of biology because there was no direct evidence of Lamarckian evolution of inherited characteristics. But now, with Sheldrake's idea of morphogenetic field and discovery of such phenomena as directed mutation, which I'll explain, Lamarckism is coming back. Let me explain directed mutation just for a second of how
Sure.
surprising the biological world of evolution has been. Uh, Bacteria that feed on a particular form of lactose uh, is put to starvation by offering them another form of lactose, which this particular bacterium cannot digest. So they can calculate, according to the rate of mutation that we know that this bacteria has, we can calculate how long a colony can last when starved. But what they found, these people, the head researcher was John Cairns. Um, Incredibly, they found that the bacteria enhances the rate of its mutation so that the colony can survive. Just imagine bacteria reprogramming themselves to increase the rate of its own genetic mutation so that it can survive. So if bacteria could be creative about changes, then why can't we? And that is, of course, the basic idea of Sheldrake, who says that, well, Darwinism or genes are not the only way that we can transfer hereditary information from one generation to another. Of course, we do it by culture today too. But aside from culture and genes, there is a third way, and this is the way of the morphogenetic field, these blueprints of biological form. So this is a very, very great contribution to biology that biologists still are very reluctant to acknowledge. But if they do, then you recognize that there is very much of scope of what we learn today that to be passed on to the next generation through this Lamarckian propagation through morphogenetic field. What quantum physics does, quantum physics showed that this learning that we attain, modification of morphogenetic field, that is non-local memory. This memory exists outside of space and time. So it very well can be propagated non-locally to our future generations. So if you and I work together and generate love circuits in our brain, those love circuits will be inherited by a future generation without doing anything, just by being born. Isn't that the way to change the world?
Oh, absolutely.
No other way.
Absolutely. And well, you've just touched on a really important subject there, Amit, is that, love is the only answer, isn't it?
Yes. I am, that song of Beatles that always comes to my mind. All we need is love. But of course, that's easy to say. To manifest love in our brain as a circuit is difficult. Mother Teresa did it, and many other people have done it. Have I done it? I don't know, but I tried. And but that is the greatest gift that we can create for ourselves, to have a circuit of love in our brain so that we can be loving, we can be perceived as loving, we can behave as loving, we can really transform another person's life by being loving to them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not always easy when you're in the moment of an argument to bring yourself back into space of awareness, in a sense, back into the moment. Sure, that's a better word for it. I mean, is being in the moment important to your work as well?
Absolutely. Being in the moment, and at that moment, remember to love, to bring heart energy, what traditions call heart energy. Today we have understanding of what heart energy is about. So, that energy in the heart, approach the relationships that way, that has to be practiced. And at some point of the practice, what happens is what we call quantum leap. A quantum healing takes place. All of this anger that we carry, all the frustrations that we carry, all the competitiveness that we carry as brain circuits, we don't have anything to challenge these brain circuits of negativity. But if we have this creative experience of discovery of love, we start the process of making a love circuit. And then we can balance these negative emotions. That is the key, really, of changing the world.
Yeah. And I mean, where do you see the world in 50 years from now? I mean, would you like to perceive it as being more consciously evolved as well?
I think it's inevitable that we will become more consciously evolved. That's inevitable, and we will probably do it, taking a little bit longer. I don't think 50 years is probably too short. I don't think it's adequate, but certainly within this century.
Yeah.
This is 2013, so my prediction has 87 years. I think that has a better chance of really, really changing the world.
Okay.
I think it will happen, Kevin.
Oh, wonderful. I think, and I do believe that as well. And, yeah, your work is really intelligently constructed as well. And that's what I like about it. It's very nuts and bolts as well. So, coming back to social change, well, take the case of the recent Arizona shootings in America. I mean, many people are blaming the polarized sort of political environment. But how would you solve the problem of political polarization then?
Well, that is the whole starting point. We are going back to the very starting point of quantum worldview. Quantum physics says that consciousness is the ground of being, and matter and mind exist as possibilities of this consciousness to choose from. So if we recognize this worldview, we immediately include both the scientific materialist worldview, which is one part of the pole, and the other pole, of course, is old-fashioned religion. But this view includes both, because a little bit of thinking shows you that this gives a balance between matter and spirit, explaining their respective role. Matter gives us the possibilities, spirit gives us the choice. So when both of them are included, then I think we can proceed with more friendship than we have exhibited recently. But of course, you have to understand that changing worldview takes time. Worldview requires these understandings, these meanings, these new values, these ideas of quantum physics, of potentiality and actuality. These things have to penetrate into the culture itself. But culture already is recognizing. Just see the popularity of words like quantum leap. It's common now. Quantum, it's hugely popular word. You see it almost everywhere. Of course, the meaning is not necessarily this meaning that quantum physicists have, like quantum leap, discontinuity, or non-locality. Ordinary people may not be aware of these particular nuances of quantum physics. But I think when they become aware, which will probably take a few decades, then the paradigm shift will become very rapid. And the other thing is that, the academe right now is the center of scientific materialism. So really, in America, we see this very clearly. The liberals, as they're called, they're concentrated in the academia, who have become the conservatives in terms of scientific thinking, old paradigm thinking. And the conservatives, which of course are Christianity-based, they're sort of lost. They want values, and yet they do things which are completely anti-values. Fox News, they regularly preach the importance of values. On the other hand, what they do, they distort truth, which is the highest value. Without truth, there is no value to any value. So, in this way, the two parties, two political groups, two poles of polarization, are both very misleading and confused. How can we bring unity in that? We bring unity by bringing scientific clarity with both theory and evidence. Quantum physics is giving us that. Because we are ultimately capable of rational thinking, humanity has that, that is what is called humanity over animality, which is just pure feelings. I think rationality will win over, and we will be able to shift paradigm.
Right.
We will be able to integrate the two worldviews.
Okay. Well, I mean, rising healthcare is a major problem. I mean, how would you propose to deal with this as well?
I have such a simple solution, Kevin. I mean, in your country and in my country, America, both suffer enormously. We more than you do, because you have a socialistic system which actually works pretty well. I have been in Britain, and it was really amazing how quickly I could get medical help and how cheaply.
Yes.
And even being a foreigner, which you can't quite get as cheaply or as easily in America. So you have a better system already. But even then, it's so costly that I know it's bleeding your budget every year. What is the solution? Solution is so simple. All we have to do is to recognize the efficacy of alternative medicine. Alternative medicine, like Chinese system, the classical Indian system called Ayurveda, homeopathy. These are cheap. But your country, I know, has a ban over homeopathy that a doctor cannot even mention homeopathy on the telephone to his patient.
Yep, that's right.
So this is ridiculous. Homeopathy now has scientific understanding, scientific backup, both experimentally and theoretically. Quantum physics has done that. I have written a book on it, The Quantum Doctor. So if we legitimize these things and recognize that people have the right to medical help, no question. But how much? If alternative medicine can take care of the people with preventive medicine and the cure of the chronic disease, where alternative medicine works better than allopathic common medicine, then why not use alternative medicine? Why not convert the insurance programs that will be for public, or in America for the old people? Why not make them geared to guarantee only the alternative medicine and not the expensive allopathic medicine, except for emergencies? If we did that, calculations show that the medical cost immediately goes down. Immediately goes down by a fraction, by entire, I can't tell you how much fraction, that depends on how efficiently we employ this model.
Yes.
But it certainly be a small fraction of the current cost.
Wow, your work is, I thought it was going to be, it's absolutely fascinating. And what final message would you like to give to the audience, Amit?
I think we already have talked about the final message, but I'll repeat it, which is that only a few people can change civilization towards the better. We very drastically, very urgently need to bring love in our midst as a brain circuit. So if you are capable, pursue love, make a brain circuit of love. People in this century, there are ample examples already. Many people have done that. We have Dalai Lama, we have Nelson Mandela. We have a huge number of people who have found love and has a brain circuit of love. Why not you? If we did that, people say that 1,000 people brought out the Age of Enlightenment, which changed the nature of European civilization and subsequent to the world. Why can't we do that in the 21st century? In fact, my feeling is that we will be doing it, we are doing it, and I hope you will join us. I call ourselves quantum activists. So become a quantum activist.
Well, Dr. Amit Goswami, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Kevin, for inviting me.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on The More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows and updates. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk. And remember to like us on Facebook for the latest updates. So, until next time, be safe.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.